Hello everyone, my name is Eric Terry Mullins, and today we're going to be looking at Goodsmile Company's Kantai collection Kuubo Wo-Kyuu, otherwise known as the aircraft carrier Wo-Class. She's a scaled figure, 1:8 to be exact, and I actually find this to be a little on the small side. I would have preferred her to be 1:7, but she does have a lot going on and she is rather large despite her smaller scale. This is a beautiful figure. She looks so awesome, so imposing, so loss of emotion. Full disclosure, I've never played this video game before. I know a little bit about it, but not all that much. I think that back in the day there was like an anime and I was kind of watching it while it was being aired, so the bit I know is basically from that. They're called the Abyssal Fleet, these girls. I wasn't sure, like I know in the anime, and even the few things I looked up online, it was kind of like ships that drowned and that would come back to life and they'd be these zombified looking ships. But at the same time, I had heard that because there's all these teeth and monstrous appendages and things like that, it kind of correlates to the American Army and how they would paint those teeth on the sides of their boats. It actually takes place during the Second World War, and if they were all boat girls, kind of makes me think of another game. Although I'm pretty sure that Azur Lane was inspired from Kantai collection. I just personally jumped on the Azur Lane bandwagon, but the Abyssal Fleet is beautiful. I am a huge fan of almost all of their designs. They look so awesome. It's like a perfect mix of monster girl with robot girl that I really love, like a beautiful fusion. So let's talk about that base. Holy cow. Alright, so this base right here, my goodness. This is probably the nicest base that I've ever seen in my life. I've seen a lot of really nice bases. I mean to say by that is that this base works perfectly with this figure, with beautiful colors to match. If you put a light under it, it actually lights up, which is absolutely incredible. And it really gives an ominous, creepy feel to the entire figure. The sculpting is just immaculate. It doesn't feel plasticky or, I guess, like overly smoothed out. Like it feels rough and rugged, like the ocean. It doesn't feel like regular water. It feels like you can see the salt mixing in with all of it. It's such a nice base. This base is the standard I hold up to for every other figure when it comes to bases, especially when considering the price point, but we'll get into this later. After that we have the boots, and they are beautiful. There's some gorgeous highlights in there, some amazing shading, beautiful gloss that really makes them pop on top of that base that's very matte. The duality you get from the matte and the gloss in this figure is very well thought out. Then we move up into her pants, which are also gloss, incredibly well shaded, with a bit of highlights too. It almost gives you that wetsuit that's wet feeling, and it looks so smooth. Very, very beautiful. And it really gives her this elegant look. I absolutely have to mention this. The figure looks very little like its source material from the game. The illustrations from the game look very sketchy and rough, which we don't get whatsoever on this figure. She's very smooth and very clean despite all the textures and scarifications on certain parts and the weathering. And the legs on the original illustration are so thick. They either look super muscly and just very like larger legs in general, whereas on the figure it's a lot more slender and elegant. Personally, I prefer the elegance to go with her cane. I think the whole outlook of the figure itself is just nicer, but this is absolutely personal preference, because if you're really a large fan of the original illustration, this drawing is very beautiful, and you're not going to be getting this drawing when you buy the figure. I think the figure kind of represents the anime version of the character a little bit better. She has this really unique looking belt piece that's around her hips, and it's all metallic. It looks old and rugged. There's actually some weathering on it, which is really cool. And then we get into the top part of her clothing, which is matte and very well shaded. I love the colors. The fact that it's weird grays and blues and the colder use of whites, it's so creepy and zombified, like it really feels like abyssal monster from the depths. Even as we go up closer towards her chest, you can see her ribs, and that's just like, that's creepy, you know? Like, it feels kind of malnourished, or I guess like you would expect some deep underwater fish to have. And then on her chest, she has a couple of lines going down where it just feels like everything is kind of like peeled onto her. And there's more rigging after that that goes between her chest and around her neck, showing some epic teeth. Oh, I love these teeth. This is creepy as hell. So it's kind of like the bottom of the mouth with the headpiece, and it is really, really cool. My goodness, so she has this really nice cape. It is flowing, it is ragged, it is dirty, it's got nice shading and highlights on it as well, and it's really a mess, which just looks so cool. Folds are really well done, and I love how it's bunched up all around the back. It's so expertly accomplished. Her arms is the same material as the rest of the top part of her suit, and we have them looking very thin, very elegant, and again, it's really fantastic for this creepy underwater monster. Then wearing these cute little glossy gloves that are made of the same material, or at least it feels so, as her pants and her boots, and they look amazing. Her fingers are very elegant as well, and just kind of like hanging there. The least amount of effort in order to accomplish what she has to do with her body. Really cool looking wizard staff. I don't know if it's a wizard staff. It's got like a bottle cap opener at the end of it. Don't use this to open up bottle caps. It's made out of the same kind of materials as her rigging, with some beautiful weathering on it as well. This thing is kind of annoying. Down near the base, there's a tiny little point where you can put it on, but it doesn't actually stay in there. It's just kind of to prop it up properly. And when it goes into her hand, you actually have to put it in her hand. So, you know, over the course of the years, the hand's not as tight as it usually is, so this thing falls out all the time. Now, it's not broken, it's just mindful of this when you're putting her together or if you're moving her around, because it's usually going to come flying out, and it's not like a load-bearing piece either, even though she is very loaded. This figure is so heavy, it's crazy. Not as heavy as Felicia, which I'm surprised about, but that hair on Felicia is just ridiculous. But I really expected her to be a lot heavier considering this giant headpiece. Her face is absolutely gorgeous. She's got rounded cheeks, and I love that roundness, but a pointy chin, and honestly, it works so well for her. She has a tiny little mouth, and it looks kind of sad to go with these eyes that are so melancholic. And the fact that there's no actual black in the middle of the eye and it's just white feels so robotic and somewhat soulless. And this is a random thing to mention, but I love the way that the eyelashes on the decals for the eyes look. I just think they look really nice. We have her hair, which you can see kind of pushes us all towards looking at the center of her face, along with these really cute little, kind of looks like, I don't know what you call the hair that's next to the face like that, but she's got really long ones, and they also move around in almost an organic, alive kind of way that kind of makes me think like the top headpiece that she's wearing. Ugh. Of course, this thing pops out all the time. She comes with an alternate head. If you don't want this epic headpiece, which honestly I think that's the reason most people bought this, but let's say, okay, I don't want that, it takes up a little bit too much space, you get the option to opt out and swap it up. The plastic piece that goes into her neck is incredibly long, and of course this is to basically make it so that when you put the headpiece with this giant thing on it, it's a lot more solid. I've had it for years and I haven't had any kind of leaning issues or any kind of bends, so I think that it's pretty well made. This alternate head is gorgeous. The back of the hair looks really nice. There's some beautiful highlights and amazing shading on it. The facial expression is the same. However, I used it on her maybe for a whole of one day, and then I was like, what am I doing? And I went right back to this headpiece, and this thing is like, it's so creepy. So you got these like wiry appendages coming out that, like I said, kind of mimics almost her hair. There's a ton of shading and highlights on them. The sculpt on them is so well done with little cricks and cracks. It's so organic, and it feels like there might be bones in there with the shoulder looking pieces or elbow pieces here. It's just very creepy and very cool. Then we have the amazing rigging on the side of her head. These are very similar to one another, and the little bolts and the shading on this too, with a little bit of weathering as well. But I do have to mention that I find that the details on it aren't as nice as they could have been. I mean, compared to some of my Azur Lane ships that have this, but it still looks very good. Like, I would put it at like an 8.5 out of 10, which from a distance you're not going to notice, and even when you look up close, it's really nothing. I'm just comparing it to like top tier stuff here. And I love how those pieces are attached into this headpiece. You can actually see all the rigging with like these tubings and clamps. It's awesome. Where underneath this giant headpiece, we have this awesome tubing with a whole bunch of these cool, weird, like I guess, paneling and layering, almost like scales going underneath her head. The whole thing just makes me feel like jellyfish. When we get to the front of this headpiece, she has these teeth and they all dig inwards, and almost everything on this figure points to her face. So they really want you to look at the face. It's so well done, and it really pops in contrast to the rest of the dark, destructive, grotesque, deep sea abyssal flavor and coloring that they have going on here, where that face is like so soft and it's the only skin that you see on this entire figure. Then at the top of her head, everything looks all kind of creepy. It looks like some sort of ancient fish over the years, having the scars and all the shriveling that you would get from living under the water for so long. With these beautiful exhausts at the top that kind of resemble eyes, and they are cool, and the shading and highlighting is really beautiful with the blue that slowly goes into white. Little markings along the side of this exhaust pieces. It's so awesome. And if that weren't enough, you get given not one, not two, but 3 little aircrafts. Now these are creepy. All the molds are exactly the same. So basically the cricks and cracks you're going to see at the top, and even the little exhaust pieces, they're all similar to one another. There's not many differences other than perhaps mild paint variations. The teeth underneath are so cool and so creepy, and then they have these cute little guns under it. Guns themselves could have maybe had like a couple of details in the actual barrel. Pieces holding the barrel look really fantastic, and I love the use of gloss on them because it really makes it pop. But even then, again, kind of like I said with the pieces on O-Class's weaponry on her head, the lack of detail here isn't so bad, and it does resemble the game, so I can't really fault it too much for that. It's fun to have different variations of height. I love the fact that their bases are transparent. That's really cool, and they're pretty big enough to hold them up, but they are still quite like top heavy, so they can fall over quite easily. So you gotta be careful when you're placing all of this too, because if you're gonna put it in a detolf and the detolf shakes every now and then, they may fall. So really be mindful of this. The piece holding them up is a thick piece of metal. I don't really mind things like this. Like, some people would probably prefer a clear plastic. I don't care. This makes it solid. And usually when I have them placing around her, you're not going to notice them all that much. And I kind of hide them throughout my detolf around multiple other figures. So it's kind of like, you'll see her and then like, they're kind of mixed and matched all over the place. Upon her release, she was going for about 12,000, I'd say almost like 13,000 yen. That's so good for this figure, it doesn't make sense. But keep in mind, this was like in 2015, and I don't believe she's ever gotten a re-release. She came out once, she's absolutely fantastic. Get her while you can. If you really like Monster Girls, I'd say she's great. If you're not such a fan of the creepy aesthetic, you know, you might see her every now and then just be like, ugh. It's not for everybody. For me personally, out of all the figures I've ever purchased in my life, this is on my top 5. I love this thing, and the perfect balance between having something that's so much gloss, so much matte, and transparencies, different type of textures. This thing is so well built. I just don't believe it. It's the standard that I really hold up to all the other figures. If you really like this game and you really want this character, I'm not sure how much she's going for in the secondary market. I don't know how much I'd be willing to pay for this. Definitely double the price, because I feel like if they re-released her in today's day and age, I think that she would be that price, basically off of everything that you're getting here. This looks like something that Alter would make in today's day and age, not necessarily Goodsmile back in 2015. Though back then, Goodsmile used to come out with so many epic scale figures. It was really awesome. I love Nandoroids, it's just, I feel like they focus too much on them. But at the same time, that's kind of like a low cost, low risk, high reward, so I understand their business model when pushing that, and when pushing things like Pop-Up Parade. She doesn't take up too much space, which is really a good plus, despite being someone that looks like she would. These little add-on pieces are so cool, and you know what? Honestly, like, I think that most people that get her are gonna be pretty happy with her. The Creepy Beautiful is strong with this one. If you like my video just a little bit, it doesn't cost much to hit that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell. This way you'll be notified of future videos I make. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye. If it's in fact true that this is supposed to kind of represent America during the Second World War, it's so intriguing to see how different countries would have perceived such things. China's America, superhero, all-American Supergirl, and then over here you've got this incredibly beautiful, destructive, hideous, gorgeous monster all wrapped up into one. So intriguing. And that's it. That's as far as I'm going talking about World War II stuff. I'm out. Until the next Azur Lane figure review, that is.